Hello. This Shabbat in synagogue, we will fulfill the biblical commandment to remember Amalek, or more precisely, to remember what Amalek did, by reading the biblical passage that contains this commandment to remember what Amalek did. And by the way, for the benefit of those of you who are unable to come to synagogue this Shabbat in order to fulfill the mitzvah by hearing the maftir Torah reading, when we read it as part of the normal Shabbat Torah reading, we will read this passage again Thursday night following the Megillah reading for Purim. Now, another option is to come to synagogue on Friday morning, a week from now, on Purim, and hear the Torah reading for Purim Day, which is a different biblical passage that mentions Amalek. And according to many opinions, we can fulfill the mitzvah through reading that passage as well. So who was Amalek, and why is it a mitzvah to remember what he did? Let's examine the passage in question in order to understand this mitzvah more deeply and precisely. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how, undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Therefore, when the Lord your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. The passage raises many questions. Amalek attacked us, but so have many other nations. What is different about Amalek that it's a mitzvah unto itself to remember them? Moreover, the Torah commands us first to remember what Amalek did, then to blot out the memory of Amalek, and then finally warns us not to forget. So how can I remember Amalek while blotting out the memory of Amalek? And if I'm blotting out the memory of Amalek, how can I avoid forgetting? All of these questions, I think, can be answered by looking at what the verse tells us about Amalek's actions. Amalek attacked the stragglers in the rear. This shows us, of course, that Amalek was an opportunist, a predator, a coward, unwilling to fight against someone his own size. But it also tells us something about us, about the Israelite nation. The only reason Amalek could attack the stragglers in the rear is because that's where they were. Apparently, as we marched through the desert, the strongest and the fastest people were marching up in the front, and the slower and weaker members of the nation were being left behind in the dust. Had we chosen to walk at the pace of the slowest among us, or at least designated a sufficient force to serve as a rear guard, protecting those who were slower, not only would Amalek's attack have been fended off, but Amalek, being the opportunist and coward that he was, would probably not have attacked us in the first place. The only reason that Amalek attacked us was because we left ourselves, and by that I mean we left the most vulnerable members of our nation open to that attack. Had we stayed together, not allowing the slower and weaker people to straggle behind, Amalek would never have attacked us, and there would be nothing for us to remember. We are commanded to remember this incident not because of the moral outrage of Amalek necessarily, but because that moral outrage was made possible by our own negligence, our own lack of unity, and failure to show concern for our fellow Israelites. That means that the way we can blot out the memory of Amalek is simply by looking out for one another, by taking the time to notice who's straggling behind, who is vulnerable, who is liable to be preyed upon, and taking steps as a nation, as a community, to make sure that everyone is protected. We blot out the memory of Amalek by making sure that no one is left vulnerable to the predatory and the opportunistic Amaleks of the world. But we can only blot out the memory of Amalek in this way when we remember that there is Amalek out there. When we forget about the Amaleks of the world, we are also likely to forget to protect people from them. Thus, only when we remember what Amalek is capable of, we remember that there is evil in the world, only then can we blot out the memory of Amalek by protecting people from them. All of this, of course, connects to Purim, and not just because Amalek was the ancestor of the wicked Haman, whose plans to destroy the Jews were thwarted on Purim. The mitzvot that we observe on Purim are themselves fulfillments of this mitzvah not to forget Amalek and to blot out Amalek's memory. How so? We read the Megillah, reminding ourselves of the actions of Haman, who was, again, not only the biological ancestor of biological descendant of Amalek, but the spiritual and moral heir of Amalek as well. But we also send gifts of food to our fellow Jews to enhance the unity of our people, which unity is the bulwark against the Amaleks of the world. And more importantly, we give gifts to the poor, to the vulnerable in our community, matanot le'evyonim, making sure that no one falls through the cracks, and that everyone has some means of celebrating the holiday. So what about the Suda, the festive meal? How is having a nice meal a fulfillment of the mitzvah of remembering Amalek? I think the Suda actually also fits into this because if all we did was send food to our friends and give gifts to the poor, we would be engaging in acts of generosity by seeking to bring joy to others, but we would be excluding ourselves from that same joy. In order to cultivate the unity that can blot out the memory of Amalek, it's not enough to do things for others. We have to do things with them. By having a festive meal ourselves, we are participating in the same joy that we seek to share with others to whom we've sent gifts of food or money, because true unity requires not doing for, but doing with. This year, we are in greater need of cultivating a sense of unity than ever. May we each find ways to identify the needs and the vulnerabilities of others in our community, and more than just helping those people, finding ways to unite with them, to seek their good as our own and connect our happiness with theirs. May this be a Purim of expanding simcha and avas Yisrael, joy and love for our fellow Jew, and of profound achdus, unity of the Jewish people. And in the merit of these attributes, may we soon see the end of our struggles, the end of this pandemic, and the end of all our struggles and sorrows, and the dawning of the era of redemption. Shabbat Shalom and happy Purim.